Listen for my how.
Hi, my name is Nicole.
And I'm Misha.
And we're Ritual Común.
Hello.
So this will be our first video that airs, which it's exciting for us. I just want to be really clear and honest with you guys. We have filmed quite a bit of material already, and we've also filmed this video before.
We filmed this video twice before.
One, all of the material that we were doing was not touching at the issues that are plaguing our lives right now, which is the Black Lives Matter movement. And the first time we did film this video, it was like at the height of everything. It's still happening a lot right now. There's still a lot of protesters out there, but I think there's a lot more anger right when it started. We're starting to kind of begin to process, and you can see that in our video. So Misha watched it and she's like, no.
Yeah, and the whole point of Ritual Común is that we want to start to have a real conversation about what's happening and seeing the different perspectives, understanding different viewpoints and people's integration into this topic. Because although it is Black Lives Matter, it is every one of us who needs to support it. But that takes a lot of courage from all of us to look into ourselves and say, hey, where have I contributed to this issue? And can I do some things in my life to deconstruct that? In the beginning, it was like, what the fuck, right? Like, what is happening? Why is this happening? Why? But now we're like, okay, actually, this has been happening for longer than we even care to be honest about.
I'm really proud of everybody who's out there protesting now. And that will continue to do so. However, realistically speaking, I don't know how long there's going to be this mass protesting movement. And it's our responsibility as a human race to keep this going and to fuel it in other ways that might not be out in the streets, but in ways that we can have actual tangible change. For the both of us is being able to have a space where you can speak about these things. Right now, the energy is very much you're either protesting and with the movement or you're our enemy and we don't want to speak to you. You're no longer my friend on Facebook, on Instagram. And we're creating this divide, which really just furthers and propagates this issue, right? Because we're not having open conversations. And I think part of that is that there's so much shame and guilt that comes from you being honest with yourself and saying, I've been part of this problem. I've had racist thoughts. I've said racist things before. I have done these things as well. And like, does that mean that I'm this horrible human being? Well, no, I choose to think that I'm a good person. But those two right now feel like really alien concepts and they're clashing with one another. We can't just be ashamed of it and then hide it away in our hearts. It's not gonna work for anybody.
And I think there's another aspect about like giving yourself time to understand things as well that has been really challenging for people to accept at this time, because this ginormous wave of emotion and hatred and anger and frustration and sadness and grief, because we mourned the loss of George Floyd, but yet we had been mourning the losses of so many people who had had police brutality affect them. And it came to a cultivation of a boiling point where it was like, at what point do we continuously say, this is just what happens? At what point do we say, no, this is no longer a normal event or occurrence. It is no longer a one-off. This is a systemic problem. This is something that is happening that we need to step and fight against. But once we started to have these protests, these revolts, we started to understand like, hey, who is speaking up? And that's when everybody started checking their Facebooks, checking their Instagrams, like, who's posting about this? Who cares about Black Lives Matter? Who doesn't? And then, okay, unfollow to everybody who doesn't, because the people that were in it were like, why am I going to waste my time in this movement with people who don't care about it? And there was so much anger fueled in that as well. If you have never realized that you are living in a dysfunction and then you are told, hey, by the way, what you're doing is extremely unhealthy and incredibly dysfunctional, it's not going to be like, you're going to be like, yeah, you're right, I'm going to change that immediately. You need time to take that in and you need time to change that and to understand, how has this affected me? And so that's what's happening societally.
You go into it and you really think about it, right? How much does it serve us to alienate the side that is not supporting this movement, right? Because that's where we are. And even if we take everybody who gets oppressed, all people of color, disabled, cisgender, queer, if we take all those people, right, and we're like, now we're the ones on top, we've just created that same system in the reverse. And no one deserves to be treated that way. That's what we can all agree on, is that everything that's been happening forever now is not okay.
Yeah.
And I understand the anger, and I think the anger is really useful because it has collectively told us, hey, you're not alone. All that frustration, all that weirdness you felt when somebody said a passive aggressive comment to you, it's not okay. I've been there. It's not okay.
Yeah.
And now we need to change it. I think that's a really healthy place to be. But fire dies quickly, right? Like, we can have a brush fire, it goes really fast, and then it dies. And that's my biggest fear. My fear is that this will stop trending, right? And we will forget about it, or that we will have some small legislative move, like they're not funding the police as much, and then we're like, okay, yeah, it hasn't changed anything.
There's no victories in small gains. There's victories in continual gains that are collective and continuous to building a more equal future for all of us. And spiritually wise, I just want to pop this in here because I think that this is interesting to understand. When there is a shift in energy and there is a shift in consciousness, you see that there is always going to be opposition. That's the idea of creating duality within oneself, I and the other, right? And when you start to come into collective consciousness and you ask yourself, what is it that is created collectively here? What is it that we're all asking for? And when you say, okay, racism exists, we're asking for racism to essentially be non-existent, or at least to get called out on and not to be accepted in our society. That's what the collective consciousness is asking for right now. And if you think about that energetically, imagine how many people need to feel that sense of energy towards this movement in order for anything to change. Because you have to stop separating yourself in this movement. That means that if you want racism to come to a place where it cannot wild spread like fire and affect everyone in our day-to-day lives, then what actions do you have to do within yourself to stop separating yourself from, oh, I'm not racist, but I can still have these thoughts about Black people sometimes and cross the street, right? Like that is separating yourself, saying, I am not this, I am of the other, but sometimes I am of this. So being really honest with yourself about how to come into a collective consciousness and saying, okay, I have acted, yes, like in racist manners, because that is what I was taught to do. But I do not need to continuously move in that way. And I do not need to reject myself for how I used to be, or what I knew, or what I didn't know when I was ignorant about it. So understanding that and coming into a healing space for yourself, giving yourself the grace to just say, like, okay, that was wrong.
And that creates this domino effect, that if you're able to create that space within yourself and be like, I have acted in this manner, I have reinforced these systematic racist practices that our society is built upon, but that it's not like it's okay, like I should keep doing it, but it's not coming from my core, and it feels uncomfortable, and I need to give myself some time to work it through and know what's right and wrong. And that creates not just space within yourself, but then when you see another person saying something like that, you can create space for them and begin a conversation that is productive. For me to say that I'm not racist, that I'm pro this movement, I need to separate myself from everything that looks and sounds and may have once acted as a racist. Those people are just going to reinforce their ideas that we are dangerous, that we're not the same, and that's going to reinforce our idea of we cannot trust them because they're out there to hurt us.
So as Latinx, we have endured a similar issue in, like we were saying before, in a very overt way in our own countries. Where things are violent, things are dangerous, people are really afraid for their lives when they speak out on things. But what we have seen is that collectively, and it depends on the country that you're talking about still, because it still exists right now, real time to this very day, you can see an ease and a better understanding of what we came from versus what we want to become. And when we're able to identify that within ourselves, within our families, and within our communities, that's when the real change starts to happen.
People are fearing for their lives, right? Just because it's not like it is in some developing countries where you say something against the system and you just get shot in the street, you know? I think in a way, us coming here and maybe understanding or having an ease of that pressure has also created our society being kind of lulled to sleep. Like, we don't have to worry about it because my life isn't in danger, and I don't have to worry about this person fearing for their lives at night because they don't affect me. I'm just going to move on with my life. And I think we're at a point where that logic no longer holds.
No.
And that even if our life is not, somebody's not pointing a gun in front of our face, we have to recognize that our actions or inactions are making this problem worse, to the point that our lives are affected. We might not notice it in a day-to-day, but overall our lives are affected.
For those of us that are in this, and maybe we're trying to convince our families and they don't have the same ideology because they're not millennials or they're not Gen Xers or whatever, and they haven't seen the effects of this because they have come to a place, especially immigrants, right? We've come away from our own cultures and integrated into a new culture, but not fully integrated, just somewhat enough to get by, to kind of like lay low. And of course, we have in our own culture like deportations happening all of the time. That's not us. That's not our problem. We're going to lay low, lay back. But the problem with that mentality, and we can see it as it's widespread, is that when there's oppression with one person or one culture or one community, that oppression is like accepted by the lot by saying, yes, that can exist for you, but when it comes to me, that cannot exist for me. And if we don't fight to support each other, then what we are allowing is saying oppression can exist. And sometimes it's going to matter for some people and sometimes it's going to matter for other people. But altogether, it's all good that it exists as long as it doesn't touch me.
You know, who does this serve? Right. How does it serve to divide all these? Because white people and people in power are not the minority. I don't want to even just say white people, but people in power are not the majority, right? They're the minority. And what serves the best, if you're thinking of it in a battlefield, if you have like billions of people coming at you, it's going to be much easier to bottleneck that and to separate everyone and have them be disorganized so that they can continue to be in power, right? So if we don't stand behind, no matter what the tagline is, behind that community, and we don't understand that we're all being oppressed in different ways, if we're not able to come together, that minority is never going to change, because they're going to continue to make little fractions of us, and we'll never be organized. We'll have hatred between groups, and we'll never be able to make any meaningful change because they'll always be controlling the game. The houses are on fire, right? And there's a row of houses on fire. We can try to put the fire out, but it would be much smarter for us to figure out why are people starting fires? Like, why is this flame even coming up?
Yeah, exactly.
Because otherwise the rows and rows of houses are going to keep burning, and we can try to put all those individual fires down, but there's always going to be a starter.
So we have that two-part conversation, right? When one person is like, my house is on fire, and they're like, yeah, well, all houses go on fire eventually, and we have to deal with that. It's that one, yeah, but my house is on fire right now. So that's the first part of the conversation. Second part of the conversation is who's starting the fires? It's not us. It's not you. So why don't we collectively stop pointing at each house that's burning and start looking at who's burning them? And when we fight for one stance, we are saying we fight for every stance. Mm-hmm. So
and then also we're it's the coronas, guys. Also we're doing a podcast, and we don't want to just talk about these issues, but the idea behind the podcast for us is really to be able to elaborate on a lot of these issues and give other people space to speak and say their experience and their view of reality, because we only have ourselves,
right? And we're best friends, so
we're best friends, and we're both Latina, and we're light skinned, so we've had a very specific experience, and we can try as hard as we want to understand another person, but I think it's really important that other people's voices get heard. So if you're interested in that, leave us comments.
We call to you. Come on, let us know who you are, what you have to say, and empower yourself.
Because we want to support you guys. That's why we're here.
So if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. If you did not like this video,
I hold space for you.
And I'm
just go watch another video. That's where you are in your journey.
I'm just going to look at you like this and be like, okay, I see you. Anyways, comment in the comment box below and subscribe.
That was cool. It was like the Kermit T thing, like,
And we'll talk to you later.
Till the moon has set. Till the moon has set. Till the moon has set. Till the moon has set.
If you like what you hear and you want to keep the conversation going, listen to our podcast, Ritual Común Contigo.
Also, check out our Instagram where we have affirmations, oracle cards, and give a special message just for you.
Make sure to check out our website.
ritualcomún.com.
Inhala.
Exhala. Inhala. Exhala.